Listen up, fellow Democrats. Fight fake news and lies with facts. Save our democracy from right-wing hypocrisy. Keep our integrity, embrace our diversity. Whenever we're down, we always come back. So listen up, Democrats.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Progressive Oregon, an engagement live stream broadcast of progressive issues in Oregon. My name is Larry Taylor, and I'm your host today. We also have Betsy Cunningham, who will be taking your questions during the show. So we're going to have a weekly update, and it'll be fairly brief. I'm going to spend most of this hour talking about the upcoming 2018 Platform Convention of the Democratic Party of Oregon and what's going to happen there. And then we will finish with an interview with James Barber, the progressive candidate for Lane County Commissioner. So the big excitement this coming week will be the Washington County Democratic Central Committee. We talked about what's happening there previously. If you want to go see democracy in action, stop by the PCC campus, Willow Creek, on Wednesday, January 24th. The doors open at 6:30 and the meeting starts at 7. If you look at the agenda of the meeting, it looks really long and organized and civilized, but things are coming to a head in Washington County. On the next slide, I have 3 points that this meeting will illustrate. The rule of law is the principle that the law should govern a nation as opposed to being governed by decisions of individual government officials. One of the continuing problems we have is that we elect people and they think that they are queen or king of their organization, and in reality, the democracy is a system of government where the supreme power lies with the people, and they keep forgetting that. And for many years, everything was cool, and we were happy with our leadership and where they were taking us. But in the past year and a half, it's become obvious that the people are not actually in the driving seat, and they've just been given the illusion that they are, and now that's coming to a head. And finally, as the Bible says, as you sow, so shall you reap. What's happening in Washington County is rooted in the unfortunate behavior of the leadership during the last reorganization. They were flooded with people who wanted to help the Washington County Democrats be effective. They were marginalized. Instead of going away, they've just fought back harder. They're demanding their rights for equal representation, and they're demanding that their leadership follow the rule of law, which they're not doing. So things will be coming to a head. Not sure where the agenda is going to happen because it's not listed, but I'm going to go. And if you'd like to see democracy in action, stop by Washington County next week and watch it unfold. For the most part, in America, we settle things with laws rather than guns, which is what makes us unique. So today, I will be talking about the upcoming Democratic Party Platform Convention that is in March. John, if you show the slides. So there's two kinds of conventions. Many of us watched the National Convention in 2016 in Philadelphia. Huge affair, cost millions of dollars, lots of preparation and arrangements. We also have state conventions periodically, and the one that we're having in March is sort of the state equivalent of what happened in DC. So if the state convention is where we will be hammering out the platform of the Democratic Party. The picture here is actually from Massachusetts State Convention, but it looks exactly like our state convention, including the predominance of older white people, but we're working to change that. So a little bit of background on what a platform convention is. So the Democratic Party Convention is held every 2 years. This is where the Oregon Democrats meet and update their party platform and craft what are known as legislative agenda items. Any Democrat in Oregon can apply to be a delegate to the convention. Delegates are selected from every county in the state, and it's been requested that the delegations be submitted to the Democratic Party by the 14th of February, because there's a lot of work that has to happen between the submission of the the delegates and the actual convention itself. The platform is the beliefs of a party, and this is something that goes back to the inception of parties. Really, if you look at the distinction between the Republican and the Democratic Party, people argue that there are really no difference between the two. If you look at the platform, it's where the people who are actually active in the party define and write down their values and beliefs. And if you compare the Democratic Party, both at the national level and at the state level, to the corresponding documents from the Republican Party, you can see that there's a very stark difference between the two. We don't always see the elected officials in the Democratic Party adhere to the platform. And one of the common complaints is that the people that are involved in the party are far to the left of the people we elect. Doesn't matter. This is our beliefs. And when someone signs up to be a Democrat, what they're really saying is that I agree with these beliefs, and these beliefs represent my values, and so the people that I elect into office should carry them through in their actions. And if they would do that, we would not have to spend so many hours testifying and interacting with our elected officials, and they would just do what is right. So if you want to read the current platform, it's out on the Democratic Party of Oregon website, and you can see what we crafted a couple of years ago. The platform is very progressive, and all the people who joined up last year or the year before in 2016 were pleasantly surprised to see that the Democratic Party was really where Bernie Sanders was trying to lead the country. I don't expect a lot of changes to be added. I hope it'll just be another tweaking. There's also the Independent Party in Oregon, which doesn't really have a platform because they believe that we're all autonomous human beings and that we should be carrying our own values into discussions. And so you see everyone from the entire political spectrum as part of the Independent Party. And then we have the other 9 or so minor parties, which should also have platforms. We generally know what the Green Party stands for. If you look at the platform of the actual Progressive Party, it looks very similar to the Democratic Party platform. We have the Working Families Party, which also is very similar. It's the party that was created for the left segment of the Democratic Party who couldn't stand being with the rest of us. And then, of course, we have the other sides of the spectrum, the Constitution Party and the Libertarian Party. And if you want to know what those really translate to in terms of values, you read through the platform. So there's 2 parts to what we will be doing that weekend. There's the actual passage of the platform, and then there's what are known as legislative agenda items. So the platform is what expresses the beliefs of the party. An example of this from the last one was, we support equal pay for equal work and oppose wage inequalities for women and minorities. So if you agree with that and you think that's a good thing, then you're on the track to becoming a Democrat. The other thing is a little bit more obscure. It's what's known as a legislative agenda item. And the idea there is that in addition to expressing the beliefs of the party, there's actual things that the members of the party would like the legislature to do once they are in Salem. So from the 2016, one of the legislative agenda items is to amend the U.S. and Oregon constitutions to clarify the corporations are not persons. The rights extended by the U.S. Constitution are rights of natural persons only, and money is not political speech. So you see a couple of concepts rolled into there, not expecting to see that one in the Republican agenda. The legislative agenda items are then passed to the Senate President and the House Speaker with the expectation that they then become incorporated into their agenda. This is something that wasn't done before a decade ago, and there's been attempts to more closely align the party with the legislature in Salem. And so the practice has been in the past few sessions to actually discuss these with our elected officials and communicate them what the party wants. What they do with them is really up to the individual legislators. Ideally, we would use this as a filtration system on who we elect, and then also monitor their behaviors once they're elected into office. And if they do things that are incredibly opposed to the platform, then perhaps they're not. It's not appropriate for them to be representing the Democratic Party. We saw this most egregiously last year when we had the work being done on the national popular vote. We had 24 counties out of 36 passed resolutions in support of the national popular vote. We also passed a resolution at the Democratic Party of Oregon, and this was communicated to all of the Democrats in the legislature with the expectation that they would do what their party wants them to do and pass it. The House was great, passed the legislation. It got bottled up in the Senate, which is where we seem to have a lot of dysfunction and where we really need to make some changes. The Senate has not been overwhelmingly cooperative in following the platform of the Democratic Party. So when and where is the convention? So one of the problems is that it is currently a multi-day event and it happens in person. The good thing about being in person is that it's always great to interact face-to-face with people when you have discussions over things like values and policies. The bad thing is that Oregon is a really big state, and so if you live in Wallowa or if you live in Lake County or even in Medford, where it's just a blast up the I-5 freeway, is still a lot of work to get there. For many people in Portland, you can actually not have to stay in a motel when you go down there. You can actually commute between the two, although that could be a little tiring for some of us. It starts on March 16th on Friday evening. It runs all day Saturday on the 17th and then ends on Sunday the 18th. It's going to be at the Parish Middle School and the North Salem High School in Salem, and the address is 802 Capitol Street Northeast. What's interesting this time is that they were expecting greater interest in the Democratic Party platform, and so the expectation was going into this that there would be more people attending, even though the bylaws allow for almost 1,000 delegates to attend. I think last time we had something like 500 register and a little over 300 actually physically show up, and not everyone showed up for the entire convention itself. This year, we had Clackamas County, which typically elects about 30 people. They have 96 potential slots, and they filled every one of them. And it was the first time they actually had elections. Their prior process was a sign-up sheet. So hopefully that level of interest will extend to the other counties as well. Multnomah County has well over 200 delegates because of their large population size. Some of the smaller counties will be able to fill their delegations, like Harney County has 3 delegates, and we expect all 3 slots to be filled. Betsy, is there any questions yet?
Yeah, there were a couple. Oz LaFave asked, what can you say about incumbent Democrat representatives who rarely join on to the party platform? I know you mentioned it a little bit, but maybe you can expand on it.
Well, ideally, there would be a contested primary, and we would choose a better Democrat. We've talked on the show previously about the problem of uncontested primaries and uncontested general elections, where our elected officials then no longer feel accountable to the populace because they don't actually have to run for office. They just slide through both elections without any opposition. They might give cursory attention to the electorate by sending them a flyer, but they don't really feel compelled to run for office and make promises and commitments to actually represent the people. We have a number of, well, we talked about in previous shows, and you can go back and look at them. We have a number of positions right now where there are no opposition to the incumbents, and this perpetuates itself. So when Bernie Sanders and our revolution says everyone should run for office, You don't have to start at the top like President Trump did, because that's not exactly a recipe for success. But we would love to see people start joining planning commissions, running for office at the city level and at the county level, and then take that experience and run for a higher office in the legislature. So the solution, there's two solutions. There's electing a replacement when they next come up for election. More egregiously, you can recall them. No one likes recalls because they are disruptive, and it's really a waste of energy unless you have a real problem and you have to actually take someone out. Any other questions?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I just wanted to say that thank you for the response, for that answer, because those are the details that we need to know. And I want to thank Oz, who is from the Progressive Washington show, Fridays at noon, for being here on this program this morning. That's all. Just a plug. Carry on.
Good morning, Oz. Go ahead.
Yeah, Julie Love 101 question is, how does the Democratic Oregon and Green Oregon platform differ? Do you know?
I do not know. I don't spend a lot of time with the Oregon platform, but I'm sure they're posted online, and you could go through it, and that would be a really interesting exercise. Any other questions?
I think that was it.
Okay. Well, let's go to the next slide. What happens over the 3 days? So there's a...
Wait a second, Larry. Actually, I missed one question. David McCall said, is any effort made to use the platform to draw in new Dems and invite NAVs to register as Dems?
Not that I'm aware of. So that question really should be directed to the chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon, and I think that's a great idea, and they should do that. We've talked about the non-affiliated voters previously. There's almost as many non-affiliated voters in Oregon as there are registered Democrats, and it's well over 800,000 at this point. We've talked about the problem of non-affiliated voters registering. They get a postcard after they get a driver's license a month after, and unless they return the postcard and actually designate a party that they would like to belong to, they stay in the non-affiliated status. Like most people, we're all very busy with our lives, and joining a political party is not one of the top items a lot of people have in their to-do list, and so they end up in this status of being a non-affiliated voter. Our media is so fragmented; it's nothing that it's nothing that gets the attention of cat videos, and so we get to the election, and really there many times we get to elections and people don't even know that one of those are going on, and so they're surprised when they get the ballot. If they're a non-affiliated voter, they can vote on things like ballot measures, and if there's any non-partisan positions on the ballot, they would see those as well. But yes, it would be really great if the Democratic Party of Oregon would reach out to the non-affiliated voters, explain to them that if their values are in line with those of the Democratic Party, this is the party for them, and then they should join and make the party stronger. We tried to do that with opening up the primary, but the Democratic Party State Central Committee did not pass that resolution. There's still people interested in seeing if there's a way to do that, although at this point the deadline for notifying the Secretary of State is looming, and it's unlikely that we could pull it together at this point. So on the slide, what happens over the 3 days? So there's a word that we don't often use, which is plenary. And I should have looked it up, but really what a plenary session is where the entire delegation gets together for to vote on business of the convention. So the first one is on Friday, March 16th, and that is where the convention officers are elected and the convention adopts convention rules, and then they recess for subject committee meetings. And in the past, this has been for the people who will be leading the breakout sessions on the following day, so they understand the process that they're there to follow. The action on Saturday moves to the legislative agenda items. So beginning in the morning, the first thing that happens on Saturday is the quarterly meeting of the Democratic Party State Central Committee. It's a perfunctory meeting that's supposed to last only an hour. They probably will do a treasurer's report and maybe take care of a little bit of business, but it's not expected to be very long. And then once that meeting adjourns, somewhere after 10 o'clock, the legislative agenda breakout sessions will occur. They've expanded the number of articles from 9 to 11, which means that there should be 2 additional sessions in an already complicated day. Usually people sign up for 2, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. It's where, so what's been going on up until the convention is that all of the counties consider things to submit to the platform, both in terms of planks and in terms of the legislative agenda items. It's a responsibility of the Platform and Resolutions Committee to sift through all of the data, all of the submissions that have been sent to them, lump the ones that are very similar so that we don't consider the same things repeatedly, and come up with a final list segregated by subject area. So when we get to the convention itself, if I'm in charge of the environmental breakout session, I will get all the submissions that have to do with the environment, and then when the session convenes, then all of those are considered. And I'm going to go into the process of what happens inside each of the breakout sessions later. Then there's usually a dinner or some sort of social event on Saturday night. And then Sunday, we have the second plenary session. And this is where everyone convenes in one place and we adopt the platform and the legislative agenda items. There are rules being crafted by the Democratic Party of Oregon Rules Committee. I'm a member of the committee. We have passed as a baseline the rules that were used 2 years ago. We have adjusted those for corrections and some minor enhancements. There's a whole section on legislative agenda items which has not been discussed. The deadline for, we're really way past when this should have been done, and so it's really too late to be changing the session because people have been working on the assumption that things are going to work in the future like they have in the past. So I think those will be very similar as well. So on Sunday, we adopt the platform and the legislative agenda items as a group. The one 2 years ago was high drama, and what I'll be going through later in this slide deck are things to watch out for if you attend. Any questions on this, Betsy?
Yes, James Davis asks, I registered over a week ago as a delegate to the DPO Platform Convention, have not heard back yet. Who picks the delegate and when will I be notified? Or when will people be notified?
Hopefully you were selected through your county. So the process is that each county is allocated so many delegates to elect, and each county has their own process for making those selections. Here in Clatsop County, we're going to be doing this a week from Monday on the 29th. We have 9 delegates and 4 alternate delegates to elect, and we'll be doing that as part of the county meeting. And so each county has been going through a process of selecting their delegates. If the delegation is not completely filled, there might be a process within the county for adding you in if you're interested in going. I would contact the chair to find out what the process is if this is not something that you're regularly engaged in. So as I said earlier, the delegations from each of the 36 counties are due at the Democratic Party of Oregon on February 14th. And then they will be reaching out to all the people who have been elected delegates and alternate delegates and giving them an opportunity to select which breakout sessions they would like to participate in, and they will do their best to assign you to the subject areas that you're most interested in. If you've done something else, then you've not actually registered for the convention. Anything else, Betsy?
No, I don't think there are any other questions.
Okay, then after the convention adjourns, so if we follow a process that's been done previously over the past two, we will electronically select the legislative agenda items. So you will receive a really long electronic ballot if you're a delegate, and you're given a certain number of items to vote for, and then the ones that rise to the top, like the top 12 or however many of the rules end up specifying, become the legislative agenda items that we will take to the legislature. It does no good for us to show up on their doorstep with 200 legislative agenda items, because it doesn't give them anywhere to focus, and they look at that and they go, what do you want us to do with this? But if we give them 12, it's a much more specific list, and you would think amongst 60 House representatives and 30 senators, we could find someone who would like to represent what the party is actually interested in. Then following that, the Democratic Party of Oregon shares with the legislature what the delegation picks, and then they publish the platform, and that becomes the platform for the next 2 years. So things to watch for. This is where it gets really exciting. And if you've never been to one before, and if you've never been to conventions before, you're going to see a lot of rituals that are wrapped up in parliamentary procedure, and it might be a little daunting to participate and intimidating. But don't let that stop you from speaking up. If everyone does their job well, they should explain to you, the delegates, even if you have not been there before, what will be happening and what your opportunities are to participate, so you can be an effective delegate at this convention. So the first thing that happens is the assignment of delegates to the subject areas. That will happen between the 14th and probably the end of February. So at some point, if you're a delegate, you will be notified on which of the subject areas you've been assigned to. Hopefully you have the ones that you signed up for, but there are some subject areas that are more popular than others, and so someone will probably get into something that they're less interested in. But still, you can take your values as a Democrat to those and use those to craft the platform and the legislative agenda items. There's some editing. So one of the things that happens is that the chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon appoints an editorial committee, and what they do is that they take the raw material that's been presented to them, and they should clean up the English and make it a cleaner statement without changing the actual content. So hopefully things will not get heavily editorialized. It took the editorial committee literally months to produce the final document last time. So the platform planks. Is there a process in the rules for submitting planks that didn't get through the Platform and Resolutions Committee? The last thing we want to have happen is for a process in place where you cannot submit anything from the floor, because sometimes committees are packed with people that end up with a particular bias that is not representative of the state of Oregon, and so you always need an alternate process for getting things in. And then the other thing to watch for is, did your county submit materials that isn't included in the final thing? So last time the excuse was we had so much work to do that we couldn't get all of the county's items printed up for consideration, and there was an alternate process for bringing those up into the discussion. Fortunately, we had some particular ones here in Clatsop County that we were interested in. We made sure that a lot of people were aware of them and that they were brought up in the sessions and considered and made it through. And we also followed the process for submitting a plank that was not approved by the Platform and Resolutions Committee beforehand, and was able to get that into the platform of the Democratic Party of Oregon. So there better be a process for that. If there's not, what we need to do is attend the session on Friday and amend the rules. So happy path through the convention. The rules are great. It's just a matter of voting yes to all this stuff, and then we can go party on Friday night. It's really important, though, that everyone review the rules and make sure that we are comfortable with them and that they have been crafted to reflect democratic values and good parliamentary procedure. And if they don't, that we have amendments to propose to the rules on Friday night. So things to watch for in the first plenary session. So interestingly, we've always been good followers and trusted our leadership, and so the election of officers has never been contested. When we had the convention in 2016 for selecting delegates to the national convention, it was an open question of if we would accept the officers that were presented to us. And as people more and more understand the power that they have at these events, they're not going to take things that are just handed to us. So it'll be interesting to see who the leadership of the Democratic Party of Oregon presents as candidates. And if we don't like them, we can elect different officers of the convention itself. And this really does make a difference because they will be controlling the meeting and allowing what gets discussed. And so if there's low attendance on Friday, but they need a quorum, they'll be able to pass the rules. If a majority of people show up who don't agree with them, then the rules can be changed. So in the Saturday breakout sessions, the delegates are pre-assigned to breakout sessions. All of the materials that have been submitted should show up. Each breakout session reviews the language of the legislative agenda items, makes appropriate changes, and then the session delegates vote on what they have crafted, and the top legislative agenda items are forwarded to the convention on Sunday. So again, Saturday, the breakout sessions are divided by the subject areas, and the whole activity is crafting the legislative agenda items under each one of those. Things to watch out for. So again, missing legislative agenda items. Hopefully the breakout sessions have been geographically dispersed, so they represent all of the congressional districts and should be chosen randomly, and no one's going through cherry picking people who favor certain things. I don't know who assigns people to the breakout sessions. A big problem is time management, so they end up with a lot of work. In the breakout sessions I've done in the past, we've always been able to handle all of the legislative agenda items that have been submitted, including ones from the floor, but it's tight. So don't allow the who's ever chairing the breakout session to forget to watch the clock, because the voting piece at the end is where the legislative agenda items get ranked, and those are the ones that get presented to the floor. So for the second plenary session, it's really important to read through the rules on this. So there's rules governing debate and time, and you should be very cognizant of those going into it. And the chair should also be very cognizant of those and adhere to the rules, because if that happens, then it'll be a civil convention and everyone will be happy with the results, or at least can accept the results if they're not happy with them. There could be high drama on Sunday. There could be threats. There could be walkouts, and there could be inappropriate behavior where people are escorted to the door. So these things actually happen. The process for adding items on Sunday, there should, depending on how the rules end up, though, there should be forms available at 5 o'clock on Saturday for people who want to add platform planks or legislative agenda items that they didn't see presented that day. There's a requirement for signatures. Last time it was 50 signatures, and they had to be from all 5 congressional districts. For the platform plank that we forwarded, we were able to organize those within an hour and get them submitted the next morning. The materials are due the next morning. If you're not organized and prepared for this, it'll be a little bit of a challenge because everyone has dispersed at the end of the events on Saturday, and you won't see them until the next day. Why do you care about this? You can remind your elected representatives of what the platform says when they vote. The beliefs of the party are examined by people outside of Oregon. So if you want to compare like Oregon Democrats to Utah Democrats, you could probably compare those two platforms and see the difference. Oregon is considered a very progressive state, and that's what the platform demonstrates. The platform provides materials for the Democratic National Committee as they prepare for 2020. So even though there will be yet another platform convention before the next national convention, the changes that we make now will be considered in the next one and roll forward. And the convention is a rare opportunity to debate and exercise democracy in this world that we are in today, where people are divided. Any final questions, Betsy?
Yes. Let me see. Ozafave asked, I said he was not trying to just be snarky, but how well did the process work out in Philadelphia?
Well, it's a much more drawn out process. So before the convention, there was a meeting, and I believe it was in Philadelphia or in Florida, where the platform was hammered out. The platform committee was heavily packed with the supporters of Hillary Clinton. They were outnumbered about 2-to-1 in all of the committees. But having said that, the Sanders contingent was able to influence, and I can't remember some of the specific things that they got in there. I believe the free college one was one where they made progress, but they were able to negotiate just as any Democratic body can. They were able to negotiate and have influence and come up with a document that they were generally pleased with. So, when you compromise, no one is totally happy with the end results, but it actually worked. Then that platform was then published at the convention in Philadelphia and accepted by the floor. So I think it worked fairly well. The problem was who was in the platform committee, and so that's where there should be some changes so that the membership of the platform committee is representative of the electorate.
And I'm looking at the chat conversation. We've got a lot of our old fans here, and I just want to say, now that I know what I know, having grown up a little bit and learned a lot from Larry and other people talking about democracy, it's pretty obvious that what we got out of the platform in 2016 was what we had power to get out of it. And if we want to get more out of it next time, we need more power. And that comes with people in office that we elect. And that's why Larry talks about the specifics of how we do this and who we need to replace. That's how democracy works. And that's why we choose to work within the Democratic Party, because there's an existing structure and existing power. So, there.
Excellent points, John. Anything else, Betsy?
Yeah, Phil Britton asked, I think you had talked about this a bit earlier about the open primaries in the Democratic Party. Maybe you can expand a little bit on, who gets to choose that and, kind of what we need to do if we want open primaries.
So the rules on opening the primary to non-affiliated voters are articulated in the bylaws of the Democratic Party of Oregon. You can go to the DPO website and pull those up and see what the rules are for opening up the convention, opening up the primary. And that's what we did about a year ago. There was a lot of interest to open up the primary. We followed the process. The decider is the State Central Committee. The State Central Committee is made up of delegates elected from each of the counties based on the number of Democrats in each of the counties. And those are the people that decided. And the bylaws state that it takes a 2/3 majority to open the next primary to non-affiliated voters. We received a majority, but we didn't get 2/3 majority. So we almost made it. We were very, very close. We had a lot of voters' remorse afterwards because people understood the implications of what they did once they went away. We tried to get an emergency meeting called for the state central committee so we could reconsider this, but we were not successful at that. That decision was made by the chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon based on recommendations by the admin committee. And all those people are listed on the DPO website. So if you'd like to express your opinion, you're more than welcome to contact them. Anything else? Either you went silent or there's no other questions. So,
sorry. I just want to make a point. I was at the 2016 DPO convention, and I was a Bernie Democrat. I mean, I came into the Democratic Party because of Bernie Sanders, and I really encourage people to get involved because I think the platform says what we stand for, and we have to define that and make sure that's ours and it's not defined by other people. The other thing is, I've also been to a Pacific Green Party convention and their platform process in my life. So they're very similar. I mean, it's much more structured, than in the Democratic Party, but their conventions are different. But, that is where any party sets what they stand for.
Great input. Anything else?
I don't think there are any other questions. Thanks.
I'm considering devoting a future show just to answering people's questions. So if we do that, we will put a link out there for people to submit, and we'll just spend the whole hour answering people's questions about politics, how to get involved, and make sure that you understand what's going on. So we'll close that topic, and we'll go to our next topic. Today, as a guest, we have one of our fellow progressives in Oregon, James Barber, who is running for Lane County Commissioner. Welcome, James.
How you doing, Larry?
Doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
So tell us about the position you're running for and what motivated you.
So I'm running for East Lane County Commissioner. The reason I'm running is we're facing historic levels of income inequality, the concentration of wealth, stagnant wages, unaffordable health care, environmental threats, our highly inadequate law enforcement in our rural communities. There's all kinds of issues that we need to address, and I'm hoping to help with that. So what was your other part of the question?
How did you earlier you and I had a really interesting conversation, and we talked about leading a sort of an introverted lifestyle, and then suddenly you changed, and your wife looked at you and said, "This is not the person that I thought I was married to for 17 years." So what pulled you in to get involved and actually run for office? Someone who had been very family focused before.
Yeah, so I guess it kind of starts at the beginning. I grew up in poverty. We needed government assistance for food and electricity. And really, as soon as I could work, I was always working. I worked 2 jobs for quite a bit of my life with the goal of starting my own business. And I ended up doing that shortly after I got married. And basically, there's not much bandwidth outside of running your own business to pay attention to politics, things that are going on in the rest of the world that might affect your business. But really, it's just about survival. And shortly after I transitioned from that business into real estate, I found myself with a lot more time. I started paying attention. I really started listening to Elizabeth Warren. And from there, it transitioned to Bernie Sanders when I was ready for Warren, and she never ran in 2016. And so that transition really changed my life. So from being focused on my family and the business and just making sure that we're able to survive, I've got 3 kids, to realizing that there's this whole bigger world, there's this whole bigger picture, and we can really help people a lot if we get involved in the politics and the issues. And so I was never one to get out and go party. I didn't really have a lot of friends. And so when I started getting involved with Bernie and I met all these awesome people, these wonderful activists, and I'm always wanting to hang out and talk with them and figure out how we can solve problems and make this world a better place. To my wife, it was a big shock. And so, for 17 years, well, I guess you could say 15 years, she knew me as this person that basically hung out and read books at home and hung out with the family. And now suddenly I'm out talking to people. I'm hosting events, trying to get activists connected. I'm making speeches, and then suddenly I'm running for office. And so it was kind of a big 180 from the person she used to know.
One of the things I like about you, James, is that you're very thoughtful and you don't just adhere to dogma, but you actually think through things and ask questions in a very thoughtful way.
Thank you.
Do you feel you do that?
Yeah, and it's deliberate. So almost all of my jobs have been in customer service, and I consider my business that I ran a customer service business. We did pressure washing and window cleaning all over, and it's all about how we can help. How can we help the people? And in customer service, they say the customer is always right. Well, for anybody that's actually worked in it, we know that that's not true, right? The customer is not always right. But what I like to say is the customer always has a valid viewpoint. And if we think of it that way, then when they have a complaint or when they're talking with you and they have an issue or they have a problem they're trying to solve, we've got to understand where they're coming from. And I take that into the political realm. And I found it's pretty easy for me to talk to everybody. I can talk to people across the political spectrum. And if I approach it with, they have a valid viewpoint, let's try to understand where they're coming from, what experiences do they have that led them to the conclusions that they're making that might be different from mine. I think it's really helpful in negotiating to compromises and also bringing them closer to our goals. Rather than just not being able to work together. There's this divide in our country right now that is really hard to bridge. And a lot of that is because people don't listen to each other. We don't have the conversations that see the humanity in each other and allow us to work together.
So tell us a little bit about your race and the structure of commissioners in Lane County. If I remember correctly, it's historically been the commission's been dominated by Republicans, right?
Yeah. At least for the last 8 years, there's been 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And that kind of changes how the county is run and where the focus is. They've done a really good job of keeping the budgets intact, but it's been at the expense of public safety. The workers, Lane County workers, the people at the low end of the scale are still at the very low end of the scale, while the people at the high end tend to get the raises, the high percentage raises. So there's different approaches I think that we need. Our public safety funding for our rural communities. They're doing a really good job at building up a reserve. With Trump in office, we're probably going to be facing another recession very soon with all of this deregulation. So it's good to have the reserves. Don't get me wrong. But,
perhaps Monday.
well, that won't qualify as a recession, but so it's good to have reserves. But where is the proper balance with how many millions and millions of dollars we're putting in reserves while we're leaving our rural communities underfunded with public safety? Lane County is the size of Connecticut as far as the area. And we have 4 sheriff's deputies on any given shift to cover that all of the unincorporated areas, which basically stretch from Florence all the way to McKenzie Bridge, the city of Coburg, down to Cottage Grove and London Springs. So it's really a lot to ask from our sheriff's department, and people wait 2 hours if it's even worthy of a visit out, if they have an emergency or if they have to call the sheriff. So it's kind of a big deal. We just need to prioritize things differently. We have a really big homeless problem here in this county. mostly in Eugene, but a lot of that is unaffordable. Everything is getting to be unaffordable. So our housing, we need new housing at all income levels. I don't know if our current commissioners, I don't know if they're capable of solving the problems that we need solved in order to make things better, you know?
That's a fascinating point, because what you're illustrating is how values translate into how you govern. We have a similar situation here, in that when the county was dominated by Republicans and the Astoria, they would often say, well, that's not something that we do. When someone would propose something in the realm of social services or the arts or anything like that. But really, unless there is a law forbidding it, that's not really a valid statement. And so it goes back to the values that our representatives bring into the office that translate into the actions that they take.
Yeah, so I can give you a specific example, something I just wrote about on my Facebook page yesterday, I think. Homelessness is a big deal. Supportive housing is really important in solving the homeless issues. It helps to deal with the high frequency users of our emergency systems that tend to cost the most money. And so we have a poverty and homelessness board that the county has created, and that's great. They're doing really good things. They have a goal of 600 beds by, I think, 2021. And currently the plan is there's a funding in place, or really close to being in place, for a 50-bed unit. The plans for that, I mean, this is great. Supportive housing means it's going to have people on site to help these high frequency users. It's a low barrier housing, so they don't have to get off drugs, or they don't have to be clean or sober to get into it. So it's really great, right? There's one aspect of it that, like, I really question, and really what it is there's a requirement that if any of these people who are in this place have a job, 30% of their wages are going to go into the program. So they're going to have to pay 30% of their wages. And so my concern is, and what I see with a lot of our social services, is there's a tendency to help people that are really struggling get right up to the edge of being able to survive, but don't let them get too comfortable. And so any time there's income above this magic line that people are just barely struggling to survive, they're still living paycheck to paycheck, and they still have to worry constantly, and they're stressed about this. Anytime they earn money right above that, we need to take some of that, rather than trying to help them build a safety net. You know, we've got 39% of the people in this country have zero in savings. So a ticket, an accident, an illness, you miss a bus, anything could be devastating to people like that, as opposed to somebody that might have maybe $1,000 in the bank. It's just this type of approach that I hope to bring to the county commission. Like this is a great idea, but I think we can make it better. And let's explore these systemic problems that we have that tend to undermine this good that we're doing.
Are there other candidates running so that you'll be able to have a majority of progressive thinking on the commission, or are you going to be isolated?
Yeah, there's a real good chance that we could flip the commission in this election. There's a candidate named Joe Burney running for the Springfield commissioner position, and he's really great, really progressive, and he's spent his time working with clean energy in California. So I'm really excited that if he wins and I win, that we will be able to transform Lane County and have it be a leader in clean energy. And traditionally, my district especially is made up of a lot of old timber towns, and there is not much money in timber these days. I mean, businesses can make money in timber, but that money doesn't come into the communities as much. There's not as many jobs. The mills are mechanized and then automated, and we just don't have the income ability from those services, from those resources. So I'm really hopeful that we can lead Oregon. Lane County can lead Oregon in this clean energy. It's going to be the future economy, and I'm excited.
Well, that's exciting. I hope you're successful, and perhaps we'll have you on again later so we can see how you're doing. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing?
Vote for me.
Where do we
send me lots of money. No, I have campaign finance reform is kind of a big deal to me. There's not a lot I can do as county commissioner except lead in how I run my campaign. And so one of the pledges that I've made is that I only accept individual donations. I won't accept money from corporations, super PACs, or even unions. And I know that's strange I am a Democrat. This is a nonpartisan race, but to not accept money from unions, I have some thoughts about that. I'm very supportive of workers and the labor movement and unions in that regard. But I've been in talks with unions about better ways that maybe they can help in this district without actually giving me money so that I can maintain my pledge. So it's really important that if people want to help, they would like to see this commission flip, that try and help out a little bit. Send us a few dollars. The website is www.jamesbarber.vote. You can sign up to volunteer there. You can donate. Any bit helps.
Thank you, James.
Hey, James.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, just real quick, I want to say thank you very much for running. This is one of those offices that people don't talk about that actually has a lot of power and bearing on what's going on in your local community. And so this is one of those things that, go get a sign or help pay for some signs, stick it in your yard. These are important offices that don't get talked about ever on the news. And so I want to thank you for running, James, and I hope that you win and can do some good for your community.
Thank you. And the commissioners, I didn't really say, the commissioners are the head administrators for the county. They deal with all of the budgeting. They also double as the Board of Health. So in our fight for single payer, there might be some things we can do to make sure in this position that everybody in our county can be covered with healthcare. And that's something that I'm going to be looking at also.
Well, good luck, James.
Thank
We'll
you.
talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Somebody had a question about how much money do you have to raise?
Oh, good question. So there's about 50,000 voters in this district. If I want to send out any mailers, you're looking at about 25,000 to get it out to all the voters. Realistically, we wouldn't target every single voter unless we had a plethora of funds. But we're spending most of our money door knocking, printed materials. We do hope to do a couple of mailers to at least highly likely voters for the primary. And so we're shooting for about $40,000 to be able to do that. And I think we're at about 15,000 so far. So any help would really, really be appreciated.
And a follow-up question is, how many votes do you need to win?
Target is about 9,000, just under 9,000. That would be in the primary.
Awesome.
And would that be 50% of the expected voters, or?
Yeah, that should be over 50%. And there's at least 4 people in this race, so it'll be a challenge to get up that way. But I think I have a really broad base of support, so I'm always hopeful.
Cool. Well, good luck, James.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for what you're doing.
And just to wrap up, we do have some upcoming events that you should be aware of. January 23rd, your Oregon ballots are due. Do not mail at this point in time because odds are, and especially if you live in a rural part of the state, it will not get delivered. Whether your vote counts is not the postmark, but delivery to your elections office by 8 p.m. on Tuesday. Again, February 14th, deadline for reporting delegates to the Democratic Party Platform Convention. If you want to be a delegate, contact your county chair. If you don't know who your county chair is, you can find them on the DPO website, www.dpo.org. Precinct committee persons filing is March 6th. So beginning on February 6th, you can start filing. Those are due when other ballot filings are due. The convention is March 16th through the 18th, and the primary ballots will drop around April 26th or 27th, and election day for the primary is May 15th. Do your part. Please spread the love. We would greatly appreciate contributions to both Uphill Media that helps produce these programs and to Progressive Oregon, who is working to make democracy work better here. You can donate at donate.uphillmedia.org or progressiveor.org. And this segment is being sponsored by Solidarity Campaign Management. Their website is sempartnership.com. That's it for today's show. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next week. What is our show? What is our song for going out today, Betsy? Or John?
Does Betsy
Something
remember
about
what she picked?
Something about change, I believe.
Well, yeah. So this is out of the Marcus's music box, Marcus Selections. This is the Droogs. Change is gonna come, and I don't think any of us have heard this song, so we'll all enjoy. Great.
Go Droogs.
Go Droogs.
And thanks.
So much information. Thank you so much for the show, Betsy and Larry. Great job. Thank you for being here, everybody.
I've just begun to have my fun. I'm a poor boy's son, always got me on the run, but the change is gonna come. Someday, baby, and it might be soon, you're gonna hear the news. Crime of passion may have fallen from fashion, but I had to choose. The man took a step like a real jealous lover. He had flowers in one hand and a weapon in the other. I could bite my tongue, but I've just begun to have my fun. I'm a poor boy's son, always walking on the run, but the change is gonna come. The change is gonna come.